Good evening, everyone. If I could get your attention, please. We're going to get started, so you have optimum time to ask your questions. I'm Mayor Sean Ford of City of Commerce City. I want to welcome each and every one of you here this evening. It is an honor to be here today on behalf of my City Council and welcome you all to our community. I was born and raised in Commerce City, and it has changed a lot during my lifetime. Listening is an important part of our job as elected officials. Engaging with constituents helps make our government better. So your questions are important. So to everyone in the audience tonight, thank you for being here and talking with your elected officials. The format for this event will be as follows. If you have a question, please write your name down on the card and hold it up for staff. Those names will be placed in a bowl randomly and selected randomly. When your name is called, come to the front. Each speaker will have 1 minute to ask their question. That minute will be timed, so look for the colors on the podium to make sure we get as many questions as possible. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Donna Lynn, who was sworn in as Colorado's 49th Lieutenant Governor last May. She also serves as the state's Chief Operating Officer responsible for driving better performance, accountability, and transparency throughout the state government operations. Prior to assuming her state government roles, Dr. Lynn served as the Executive Vice President of Kaiser Foundation Health Plan, Inc. and Kaiser Foundation Hospitals, overseeing an $8 billion budget, 1.4 million members, and 16,000 employees. Please welcome Lieutenant Governor Donna Lynn.
Well, welcome everyone. It's great to be here. Mayor, thank you for your introduction. You're going to hear, and we have a lot of our cabinet here today, the people that run our 19 different departments, and we also have some elected officials who are sitting right in the very front row, our legislators, and I think the governor is going to introduce each of you, but thanks for everybody who's being here. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I just want to touch on two very brief things before I turn it over to the governor. The first is health care, which we all know is a critical issue to everybody in this room, everyone in this state, and we're really pleased that we were able, through a lot of work the governor did with the team that's up here, to I think have a very strong voice to prevent the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. But you do know, and in spite of that, which is a great thing for Colorado, we have only a small, very small uninsured rate, but we do have another very real threat in front of us that I want you to be aware of. We have close to 80,000 pregnant women and children who are insured by something called CHIP, or the Children's Child Health Plus Plan. It expired actually on September 30th, so Congress failed to act on renewing a program that has tremendous benefits to Coloradans and people all over the country. We want you to be aware of that. We have continued to keep those people eligible, and we're going to do that at least through January. We have some available funds that we can do that. There's no changes in eligibility, enrollment, renewals, or benefits right now. There was a congressional committee that did some work over the last couple of days, so we're hopeful. But we could see some disruption that we are going to try to avoid and do everything we can to protect benefits for those families. The other thing I want to mention before we turn it over to the governor, and you heard the mayor say this, part of our job, everybody up here, is to be accountable and transparent to all of you. And that's what this event is in fact about. We want to hear every question, every concern, and we will give you answers, and where we can't give you an immediate answer, we will follow up with you. And the governor has set a clear set of goals for this state, how we improve our health insurance, how we improve our education, how we improve our graduation rates, and that is part of what we talk about. We have a dashboard, and whatever it is, our economy, our environment, healthcare, you can see what we're trying to accomplish, and it is something you can check on anytime. So another way that we want to hear the concerns, which you can do through that website is what we're doing tonight at the Town Hall. We look forward to your questions. I will not do an extensive bio of the governor because I think you all know him as not only the former mayor of Denver, but also our governor for 2 terms. Please welcome Governor John Hickenlooper.
Sure. Absolutely. You guys want to stand? Of course, you bet. And I guess the next step on that is go Rockies. That was a joke. I am not equivalent. I'm not saying they are in any way equal. Anyway, thank you, Lieutenant Governor Lynn, for kind of the upbeat approach on healthcare, and Chip making sure that we are all aware that this is an issue that's probably going to become another political football. I want to thank the mayor and his city council. You guys should all stand up, and I don't know all of you, I won't remember all your names, but please, these are your leaders. And I'm going to read a bunch of our cabinet people, and these guys mostly work 50 and 60 hours a week anyway, so when they're out on a weeknight, it's just like all of you being out on a weeknight. It's taking you away from your family, and it's time that you would much rather be using some other way. So I'm going to read their names, and if they would stand, and then when I'm done, they can all sit down. I like that. We have Reggie Bika, who is the head of the Department of Human Services. Sue Birch, who's the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, that's Medicaid. Shaylin Batt, who's the head of the Department of Transportation. Stephanie Copeland is the head of Office of Economic Development and International Trade. Mike Hartman, who's the head of the Department of Revenue. Irv Halter, Department of Local Affairs. Bob Randall, Department of Natural Resources. Marguerite Salazar, Department of Regulatory Agencies. Larry Wolk, Department of Public Health and the Environment. And Ellen Golomek, the head of the Department of Labor and Employment. You can give them a hand. I also want to recognize our representatives, Representative Michelson Jade, Representative Benavidez, Senator Moreno. We are in there. They are your team as well, so give them a hand. I want to thank there are a couple county commissioners here, and I know other elected officials who I'm probably missing. So forgive me if I don't give you a specific shout out. Before I start at all, I want to point out and just say that I talked to Ellen Golomek in terms of the issues around cash payments for labor. I talked to a few of the protesters out before we came in, and this is something I was updated on, I guess, about 6 months ago or 8 months ago. And I'm not sure I completely understood it then. I think I do understand it now. I think it is a very, very difficult issue to prosecute with the laws the way they are right now, because as close as I can tell, the people that are breaking the law are basically going down a chain saying, well, that's a subcontractor, so we don't have to have that declaration of workers' comp, and then he says the next person under him is a subcontractor, the next person, and it's all cash payments to subcontractors. And there's no law against cash payments, and when there's such a long string of people making cash payments to cash payments to cash payments, it's hard to establish a level of guilt that's sufficient to make any kind of a dent in what's going on. I think I understand that now, and I'm willing to sit down and say, all right, we'll sit down with our legislators and figure out if this is a system that's being abused and taking advantage of working people, making sure that their ability to earn a wage is diluted, if not eliminated, then we have a common common interest. Interest is the wrong word, but we have a self-interest. We have a common reason to go ahead and figure out how we fix it. So Ellen said that she will be glad to set up some sort of a meeting in her office in the weeks to come. You're still obviously welcome to ask any questions you want. It is something that we have to figure out how to make sure that we have a legal way of enforcing what clearly should be an issue of fairness. Also, I want to just say that Las Vegas is, I don't even know how to say it, it's still on the top of our minds. You know, some of us up here went through in detail, in emotional detail, the shooting that took place in Aurora several years ago, and if you had ever told me we'd see a shooting that was almost 10 times as large and 10 times as destructive, almost that destructive, again, I wouldn't have believed it. And I know Governor Sandoval of Nevada is a good friend of mine. He's probably one of my closest friends as other governors, and I've been in contact with him, and he's the right guy. He'll be able to help them get through it just like we got through it. But it is hard to imagine what that community, and I mean it affects, if those of you who were here, it affects everyone in the community. Anyway, our hearts and prayers are with everyone out in Las Vegas. We're here tonight to really try to learn from everybody. I don't have a big, long speech. As a state, we're doing great. By the gross economic measures, we're doing great. Are we doing a good enough job making sure that everybody is getting the increase in wages and is benefiting from the success of the state? I think that's where we still have a ways to go, and we're not unaware of that. And I think we are in the last 6 months or 9 months, we're beginning to see some upward pressure on wages. The beginning in certain places, but hopefully that will continue to grow. If you look at all the measures, we're I think number 1 state, or number 2 state for job growth, number 3 in GDP growth, overall number 1 economy. Well, that doesn't count for much if it's not giving everybody a fair shot. I have a little counter on my cell phone. We have 462 days left in my administration. We want to make sure that we follow through on trying to make Colorado the healthiest state in America. We're the thinnest state, but we're not the healthiest state yet. We want to really work with the legislature to make sure that we can build transportation infrastructure and water infrastructure. You want to talk about creating upward pressure on jobs. Let's build the infrastructure that we need, and that I think our voters are willing to pay for. Last year, we couldn't even convince the General Assembly to get a referred measure on the ballot to let people demonstrate that they want to make those investments and build the infrastructure that allows you to grow. Before we leave, we want to make sure we've renewed our efforts around education, and that every kid in this state, regardless of what zip code they're living in, they get an equal shot at a great education. We want to continue to look at connecting careers with companies, making sure that anybody who wants to switch or find a different trajectory, a different upward path for their lives, has a real shot at it. And we also want to make sure that we're working very hard at making sure, that's redundant, we're making sure that we're working very hard to make sure that we're making this environment cleaner. And right now, you look at the rapidly declining cost of things like wind energy and solar energy, and we're able to say we're going to have cleaner environment, and we're not going to see any increase in the costs. And that's something we've been waiting for a long time. Also, I think the state has taken a firm stand on this, and most of our municipalities have taken a firm stand on the issues around DACA, to make sure that deferred action doesn't get thrown aside. The president has said he's going to wait 6 months. Well, I think now is the time for action and for people to begin communicating in forceful terms with our representatives in the Congress and in the Senate that, what are the compromises? I'm sure there's a compromise somewhere, but let's get that figured out. Most of these kids didn't come here. It wasn't their choice they came here. They were brought here when they were very young. Most of these kids, it's their only home they've ever known. I think it's hard to imagine sending them back to a country they've never known. And again, that's something, it shouldn't be Republican or Democratic, shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be generally accepted by all of us, I hope. Last, I do want to make sure that the success of the state is shared, that we are going to continue. It's not just education and making sure we have the training, but it's making sure that we give entrepreneurs of small businesses the same chance to go get some contracts from the Department of Transportation or local municipalities. I can't tell the local municipalities what to do, just so you're clear. I'm very aware of that. But we are aware that we want to make sure that more of these contracts get let out to smaller businesses that are owned by women or minorities, that part of the pie gets a little more evenly distributed. So thank you all for your time. I said I'm not going to give a big speech. I'll sit down. We can start asking questions and answering questions. I want to introduce our moderator for the evening, our Deputy Chief of Staff, Amy Venturi. Happy to take your questions.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Is this working? Thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. Here's how the format's going to work. I'm going to call out 5 names, and I'm going to ask those people to please approach the front row. We have seats up here. The first person will approach the podium, and you will have 60 seconds to ask your question. And please be respectful that we have a lot of people who want to ask questions tonight. So do please keep it to 60 seconds. If I call your name, we do ask that you are the person who asked the question, again, to be respectful of everyone else here this evening. There are 3 lights on the podium you'll see as you're asking your question. When you see the red light, you know your 60 seconds is up. So please have your questions ready so you can keep it to those 60 seconds. So first, we're going to call up Nancy Peters. Nancy here. Marlon Nunez. No? Are they outside? No? Alexander Campbell. Is this one? What is your name? Are you Nancy?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Nancy's our first person, so Nancy can approach the podium. Burke Bew. Nancy, if you could just give us a couple minutes, we'll get a few other people up here, and then we'll allow you to start. Let's try Christopher Savin. Come on down, Christopher. Margarita Dramillo Hell. Just want to take a seat. Michael Lucero. Are you Michael? Okay. What was your name? Second name called Marlon. Okay. Great. All right, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. I'm going to grant my time to Ingrid and Calada La Torre. Thank you.
Again, we do please ask in the future that it will be you to ask the question instead of someone else. Thank you.
¿Quién está? ¿No? Okay. Mi nombre es Ingrid Encalada La Torre. La razón de que estoy aquí es que ¿Por qué me negó el perdón el gobernador John Hickenlooper y quería saber si podía reconsiderar su respuesta hacia mí?
This is the interpreter speaking. I'm going to ask her to repeat the question because I didn't get a chance to hear it. Si puede, por favor, repetir su pregunta.
Claro que sí. Mi nombre es Ingrid Encalada La Torre. La razón de que estoy aquí es que
My name is Ingrid Encalada La Torre. The reason I'm here is
pues el gobernador ya me negó el perdón y quería
Can you please speak
saber
into the mic?
que si podía reconsiderar su respuesta acerca del perdón que yo ya he pagado con mucho.
if you would be willing to reconsider your answer in terms of the pardon that we asked for.
Por favor, que me des oportunidad de estar aquí con mi familia.
If you could please give me a chance to be here with my family.
Y pues que estoy aquí yo con mi comunidad que me está apoyando y que quiero que reconsidere su respuesta acerca del perdón.
I am here with a community that provides me with support. We're asking you to please reconsider.
Y no sé qué opina el gobernador.
And would like to hear the governor's opinion.
Governor, would you mind repeating the question? None of us heard it.
Gobernador, ¿puede repetir la pregunta? No la escuchó.
Is that on? So the question was, would I reconsider the pardon application from Ms. Encalada La Torre? And that was one of the hardest decisions I've made. And I mean, you could ask my wife. I lay awake at night trying to sort through it. But a pardon is something that sets a precedent, and I think the challenge of identity theft and people working and then not paying taxes, and then having that some innocent person saddled with paying that taxes, having their bank account taken over, not being able to take their own money out of their account because the IRS has moved against it. You set a precedent when you do a pardon, and the issue was, again, most people that we give pardons to, there are exceptions, but mostly their crimes were 15 or 20 years ago. Anyway, it's as tough a decision, but I don't think we can reconsider it, and I'm deeply sorry.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, next question, please.
La próxima pregunta, por favor.
Alexander?
Hi, Governor. My name is Alexander Campbell, and I wrote you a letter 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you had the privilege of reading it. It was regarding Ingrid Encalada, actually, coincidentally. I'm here to support her. I attended the trial. I will be frank, I am undocumented myself against my will. I've been here for 24 years. And when you're not in their shoes, you don't understand that it's an economic. She was forced, for economic reasons. Will you, make it easier for people to get legalized so they're not forced to do what Ingrid had to do in order to support her children? Now, don't you also understand that it is more of a crime to separate a mother from her children? Thank you.
So first, there's nothing worse than seeing a child separated from a parent, but there are literally thousands of people in jails and prisons whose children are suffering because of the crimes they committed. And I don't like it. I wish there was some way around it, but that's the way the system works. We have 20,000 people in Colorado prisons. I think that's outrageous, but that is our system. You add in the jails that we have all over the state, the municipal jails and county jails, you get, half again that number probably.
What is the human, compassionate thing you can do right here, like to balance out everything? I mean, you are on your, but how can you balance everything?
Well, let's not have a debate.
No,
So
I'm not here to debate, sir.
Okay, so I would do, and I have said this, and I've testified in front of Congress, I would do anything I can to get Congress to figure out the compromises to, create an immigration policy that is reasonable, right? Fair and reasonable.
Yeah.
Almost everybody, except extreme members, really in many cases on both sides of the issue, are willing to find a compromise. And how many years is a guest worker, and what is the process after someone's been a guest worker for a certain period of time? I think those compromises are waiting to happen in the present political system. When I ran for mayor of Denver in 2003, I was happy to say, well, secure the border, make sure that the businesses operate by the rules and don't pay people under the table. That was one of my 4 platforms that I ran on. Have an ID system that works so you can make sure the system plays, and then figure out a guest worker system that doesn't break apart families, doesn't throw people out of this country, and disrupt our entire economy. I don't think it's that hard a solution. The problem is we can't seem in this day and age to get Congress to do anything, and these are not laws that the state can supersede.
Yeah,
Thank
her
you.
lawyer was a privileged immigrant from Europe. Is there a way to make it financially easier for people?
I'm sorry, we have to move on to the next question. Thank you so much. Burke?
Governor, thank you for introducing your cabinet. One of the department heads that you do not appoint is the Education Commissioner. Am I correct? The Education Commissioner is appointed by the State Board of Education. And if you're not aware, I'd like to make you aware that the State Board of Education is a dysfunctional mess. How many commissioners have we had the last 5 years? How often do you see the State Board of Education holding meetings like this? We need to have a State Board of Education whose members serve shorter terms of office, and people running for office, like the Lieutenant Governor who's running for your seat, and some of the legislators who are here tonight, need to commit themselves to addressing the problems with the State Board of Education. They are out of touch with teachers. I'm a licensed teacher. The licensing process in this state is an insult to teachers. They're constantly threatening to take over local school boards like District 14 with no plan to actually do so. It's a problem. Are you aware of that? And do you support the concept of shorter terms of office for the State Board of Education?
So, I think that's one of many solutions. A number of states actually, and this would happen after I leave office, so there's no self-interest here, but many states have the governor appoint, roughly half, sometimes a little more than half, sometimes a little less than half of the State Board of Education, so that you don't have everything up in an election. Elections aren't always the best way to pick people to operate every branch of government. And so I don't disagree with you that there's more work that we could be doing in education.
Thank you.
Christopher?
Hi, Governor. My name is Christopher Savin, and at the risk of beating a dead horse, I'm going to bring the topic back to Ingrid briefly. I just wanted to let you know my thoughts on this. In this day and age, especially with Equifax and everything that's going on, I realize that the whole issue of identity theft is a very hot topic. I myself, 10 years ago, dealt with that situation in a case that took me more than 6 years to resolve completely. But even I recognize that there's a difference between an inopportune crime of necessity and one that's done out of malice. The person that stole my identity promptly used my information to go around setting up bogus accounts right, left, and everywhere. And that hit my credit report for many years after that. There's a difference between someone forced to take advantage of a system that they don't fully understand, that there was no malice intended.
And I appreciate that difference. Again, I wasn't part of the court case, but I think that was, usually that is taken into consideration in terms of how they look at sentencing. I mean, there are literally tens of thousands of people that are using identity theft right now to get by, right? To be able to, they take care of their families. If you begin to set a precedent where that doesn't have consequences, you can expect that to magnify many times. And it's a tough system, and I'm not saying it's easy or it's even a good system, but it's a system we have. I mean, I understand. I mean, I also have people, old friends, people I know who've had their identity stolen by malicious people, and it is a different situation. That being said, you know, we talked to the woman when Ingrid took this person's identity, and she went through hell, right? I mean, it disrupted her life for several years, and she's still very, very bitter about it. I mean, there's no good answer. The situation is terrible, right? Again, it's one of the hardest things I've had to deal with because there is no reasonable outcome.
Thank you. Margarita? And again, I'm just going to ask, if you've already asked your question, to please go back to your seat so we can leave these seats open for the next group.
Hello, I'm Margarita Jaramillo Hall, and I am a citizen, and I'm here to support Ingrid. And I realize what you said is all of that is true, and we know that the system is broken, it's illogical, it's inhumane, and so I'm asking you as a woman of faith, how you feel. I mean, first of all, I want to preface it by saying I don't pretend to know anything about you personally, but you seem like a decent man, you seem like a good father, and it seems to me that in this case that you personally could make a decision that would impact a family. These are vulnerable people, and the Bible has told us that we need to protect, that we should not oppress foreigners, and our laws oppress foreigners, but you as an individual could make a difference to this person who has from the beginning tried to make things right. And as it's already been said, she hasn't been, hasn't skirted her responsibility at all. And so I'm asking you, as a man of faith, and I suppose you are, that you would consider that we would be generous and compassionate to this woman who I know, have known for a short time, but every time that I have heard or even heard her talk, she wants to do what's right. And, she comes from a country that's too poor to support her people, so they come here seeking the American dream. And to me, that seems, aside from the obvious, her only crime is that she wants to have a better life for her family and for herself.
Thank you.
I hear you, and I do consider myself a person of faith, and I can't, a pardon at this point, I mean, how do you deal with the thousands and thousands of other people? I mean, you go through each one and try to decide whose children are more needy or whose situation is more compelling. It just becomes again, the situation is impossible. I don't, despite my faith, I don't see how in good conscience I can go out and create something that would ultimately make more problems for more people.
Thank you for your consideration.
Marlon?
Hello, Governor. This is our first time meeting in person, so I'm glad I convinced myself to shave for tonight. If just a little bit of background, when I was in, middle, high, whatever, school, I was intrigued by the notion of an electoral college. theoretically, it would always be an affront to democracy in its purest form, but it was designed to fend off mobocracy and authoritarian populism. And I believe we've recently learned that it has failed. So, and that's okay, because the national popular vote is a movement that is obviously of national importance, but we don't have to wait for those gooks in the federal Congress to do anything. We can take care of it at the state level. 10 states plus DC have entered into a compact to award all of their electoral votes to whoever wins the national popular vote. This bill has passed in both the Colorado House and Senate, but in different time periods, so it's not law yet. I'm very honored that my representative, Paul Rosenthal, who is sitting over here, and my Senator, Irene Aguilar, have both sponsored in 2017 this bill. What is your position, sorry I went over time, but what is your position on the national popular vote movement, and what will you do when, not if, when it reaches your desk in 2018? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and I didn't see Paul Rosenthal come in, and if Paul Rosenthal's for it, I'm sure I will support it. I am not sufficiently versed on this, so I learned, until I ran for mayor of Denver in 2003, I never was in politics, but the one thing I learned is don't answer questions that seem simple right off the top of your head, because there can be reasons both pro and con that I'm not aware of. But I will tell you, if you make sure you leave your email or your cell phone, some way to get a hold of you, I will look at it in the next few days and make sure I get back to you. Off the top of my head, I don't have a problem with it. I will say I have tremendous respect for the integrity of our political system in this country that has gone on for so long and has managed to survive all kinds of leaders, truly great leaders and maybe great leaders that are lacking. And I think we need to be very careful when we talk about changing the basic structure of how we do democracy. We are in many ways the international model.
Thank you very much.
All right, Michael, and then I'm going to call up the next group of names. Jim Gleason, Dana Miller, Orlando Martinez, and if you could again come up to the front, Thomas Link. And I just want to remind everyone you have 60 seconds to ask your question. If you would like a note card to write down your question so it helps you, I've got extra note cards up here. Thank you.
Okay, my question, Governor, is can you explain why you do or do not believe that there is a serious issue with the underground economy here in Colorado? By the underground economy, I mean cash pay, premium fraud, and labor trafficking. Sorry.
So I don't know the depth of it, but I have heard enough about it to believe that it exists. I guess the question is, how do we prosecute it? How do we gather, and again, having some videotape or catching one person in the act, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but that is turning out not to be sufficient to get the kinds of convictions that really will change this, right? You go and you find one person, and each time you go and you get to that person who received cash, and they say, well, I'm a subcontractor, and I paid this person in cash, and they're a subcontractor. And as long as they're saying that they're subcontractors, is very, at least as I understand the issue, it's very hard to prosecute. I can turn this over to our Secretary of Labor, Ellen Gollenbeck, because she obviously understands the details of this much better than I do.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? I feel like I'm doing a commercial. First, I want to thank all you folks in green for being here today. Actually, when I pulled up and I saw the green shirts, I thought you were from my former union, the Association of Flight Attendants. We have the same colors. And I'm happy that you're here today. We do understand the problem, and we do know that it is a problem. It's just that under the current statute, it's really difficult for us to get to the bottom of it. So I've met with many of you guys before. I know I've met with Jim. And we've talked about it. We have, and every case case that has come before us where there is suspected fraud, we have actually investigated them. And we have a hotline where you can continue to report cases where you think that fraud is going on or that payments aren't being made. But it's incredibly difficult once it goes down the line to track it, and some of our investigations have really met a dead end. We've also had investigations where we have been able to reclassify employees, reclassify workers from independent contractors into employee status, and make sure that the employers have paid the back premiums and all the back taxes that are owed on them. Happy to work with you, happy to meet with all of you, brainstorm more ways. It's my understanding that there's folks here from several states. I'd love to know what other states are doing to try and combat this and to try and get to the bottom of it. But I honestly think we need to figure out a legislative fix for this, because right now we have taken the rules to the extent that we can.
All righty, thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Good evening, Governor, Cabinet. My name is Jim Gleason. I pounded my first nail in Colorado in 1976, so I'm very much aware of what's going on. I appreciate the growth that's going on in Colorado. As mayor and as governor, you've seen that growth, witnessed it firsthand, and probably was a proponent in a lot of it. But what I would like to bring your attention to is a problem of exploitation of an immigrant workforce. And that immigrant workforce is not limited to somewhere out in Stroudsburg or anywhere like that. It's downtown Denver. And I'll bring to your attention one job alone, and the information was turned over to CDLE. Those workers sought private recourse. They just settled for $800,000 just for a drywall company on the Sky House Denver. Now that $800,000, figure that out, that's $16,000 in state income tax.
Thank you.
I would like to ask, Governor, as far as yourself, the Department of Labor and the Department of Revenue, what is going to be done to protect legitimate tax-paying members and contractors of the state of Colorado, and at the same time, we may be able to fix this infrastructure problem that we're having with funding, because it is rampant. There are thousands of workers being exploited every day. Thank you.
Again,
Private recourse. I mean, the information was turned over, and they went and got their own lawyers, and privately, they settled for $800,000. So that's an indication to me there was probably twice that amount in actual. But where I really am getting discouraged is we have a Department of Revenue that says to me, taxes, collecting taxes is voluntary. I've been a resident of the state for many years. I've never heard that before. But I would just like to say that there's a way to fix some of these funding problems, and it's collecting those taxes that are owed, that all of us need to
so if you think I'm going to argue over collecting taxes, you've got the wrong governor, right? I'm afraid, as they tell me, as the lawyers tell me, and maybe we're just not good enough at figuring out how to prosecute these kinds of cases. Trust me, obviously it would pay for itself if you're right, if that kind of money is being negotiated from one job, being able to go out on a more systemic way and really making sure that everybody plays by the rules, it should more than pay for itself. But I think we've got to be able to make sure that when we go after these companies, that we are able to prosecute them successfully. And I don't know, we will look, if you can get us the details on exactly what evidence was used and why they reached that agreement, that legal agreement, we'll copy that everywhere.
Governor, I'm going to believe you at your word. And I'll say that there has been information turned over, and there's been nothing. As a matter of fact, some private lawyers will tell you They don't know what's happening with the CTLE, but they seem to be ignoring construction. And there's a lot of money being generated in construction these days in Colorado.
Certainly, and again, people avoiding taxes, paying under the table is not good for anybody. What are other states where they've been able to attack this problem systemically? I mean, is it Nebraska? Is it Illinois? Where?
California, Nebraska, Illinois, Connecticut.
Okay.
They've been very helpful in doing that. And of course, like New Jersey and Pennsylvania have been doing that. They're cracking down in Florida, has been very successful. But it's through workers' comp fraud that they've attacked that problem, and it became a felony. But part of the problem here, I think, is the penalties are minimal, if anything. Hey, you pay what you owe. That's not much of a penalty
Right.
to anybody. I mean, if you're going to cheat and you get caught, and your only consequence is to pay what you should have paid to begin with. There's nothing. I mean, we've had proposals trying to do something legislatively, and we're going to continue to do it. As a matter of fact, we're meeting with legislators next week to try and clean up that law. There is a loophole, a small loophole in it, but it's not the only thing that people aren't enforcing.
Right. So here's my commitment. I mean, I know Jerry Brown, the governor of California. I know the governor of Illinois. I know all those governors, and I am happy to convene. And if I ask them, I'm sure they will send us whoever the person is in their Department of Revenue, if that's the appropriate government agency. But we'll convene them. I'll get them all to come out to Denver and hear how they're able to prosecute this when we seem not able, and what kinds of legal changes are necessary. We've got the most powerful people in the General Assembly right here with us. We'll put them to work. Anyway, thank you. And I'm serious. I will go reach out to those states.
Thank you. Dana Miller.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Dana Miller, and I was going to cede my time to Ingrid, but it's apparent that you're not going to give her a pardon, so I will talk about something else, and that is gun control. Thank you. Could you talk a little bit about perhaps some possible things that might happen next year on the state legislature around gun control, and who might be leading that up, and how we as citizens can help? Thank you.
And you're talking about in reflection or in reference to Las Vegas? Is that
Yes.
So I think it's too early to tell how big an impact that's going to have. I don't know. I can hand any of you guys have any statements you want to make? They are much closer to the action than I am. I'm sure conversations have taken place, but it's probably too early to have those kinds of negotiation or discussions. I think that right now the way many people feel is just raw, right? I mean, it's just an unimaginable level of devastation. And again, it's going to take a while. I mean, it's a period of time to really get our equilibrium back, I think, and begin looking at it. But I'm sure people will. I think they'll, I've had a couple people talk to me about the device that was on his stock that allowed the weapons to function as automatic weapons. But I mean, it's too soon.
Well, I would like to really encourage the conversation to happen on the state level. We've been saying it's too soon, or it's never going to happen, or we can't talk about it now, and it's time to talk about it now. So thank you very much.
Orlando.
Good evening. What is your opinion on contractors that use payroll fraud to scheme our state?
So I will say once again, and perhaps more emphatically, paying people cash under the table is not acceptable, right? I mean, cash, just so we're clear, cash is a legal form of currency, right? You can pay someone in cash, but you can't do it under the table, right? You have to pay workman's comp. You got to pay all withholding taxes. You got to go by the law. And if you all will help us figure out how to prosecute these cases, we'll do it. Trust me. You're talking to people, I mean, everybody up here believes in the rule of law, believes that we've got to figure out a way to cut back on this stuff if it really, at any scale, it's illegal. And at the scale you're describing, which I think it might be at that scale where it's really literally several thousand people a day getting paid under the table. That's completely unacceptable.
Thomas Link? Is Thomas Link here?
1701.
All right, I don't think Thomas is here. I'm going to call the next group of names. James Neiman. Martin Golden. Hipólito Hernandez. Devin Juarez.
Now you guys are going to have to come up with some creative new ways of framing the issue. Your audience is going to lose attention.
Are you Thomas?
Never. Oh, that was a stupid thing for me to say. All right, I'll take it back.
James Neiman.
My brothers and sisters, Governor, Cabinet, would you be willing to commit to putting together a task force comprised of different law enforcement agencies to address the issues of payroll fraud and wage theft? Why or why not?
Fine by me. She has to do all the work.
Yeah, I'm happy to put together a task force on that. This is the first time that's actually been asked of
Well,
us.
and I think not only a task force, but again, I'm dead serious about reaching out to other states that are more successful in maintaining, a legal system whereby no one gets paid under the table. So if we do a task force here, and then maybe that's the vehicle by which we bring in some of these senior officials from other states, we'll do it. Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Martin? Martin?
Hey, how's it going?
Good so far.
Talk about payroll fraud, if you guys don't mind. What is your level of commitment to correcting the situation we have going on in Denver, and what are you guys willing to do about it? I mean, we're out here every day, and if something doesn't get done, I will promise you we'll be back.
All right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to form a task force.
Hey, that's a great idea. Thank you.
And I say that like a joke, but I'm dead serious, and we will do the task force.
Hello, Governor. Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me? Okay. What have you done to benefit construction workers in your time that you've been governor?
I would argue that trying to create an atmosphere where entrepreneurs want to come here and start businesses and getting the economy to grow at a faster rate, right, which is right now it's growing at about the fastest rate we've seen in over 30 years. When I got elected, we were 40th in job creation. Now we're first or second or third, depending on who you talk to. That is creating construction, right? And it's going to create a lot more construction. I think what you guys are all here for is how do we make sure that's the first step of any kind of growth or success is you got to begin to create jobs, because jobs create construction. But the next step is to make sure everybody gets a fair shot at getting paid a fair wage for doing those jobs, and that there isn't a big chunk of it that's going on under the table. And that's I understand that's why you're here, and we hear you, and we will respond.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Hipólito Hernandez, Local 55. So there's a lot of buildings going on in Denver. In these construction projects, there are full of contracts who are committing payroll fraud. This includes not paying workers' compensation insurance, which becomes a really big issue when workers get injured. What are we going to do about this? What is your plan on?
So that's one example. One issue is when someone gets hurt and they get injured, and they don't have insurance, everybody pays, right? The taxpayers pay. We all pay. Right. So, but I'll tell you another, so I agree with you, that's unacceptable. But I'll tell you another thing, when I ran for re-election, on 3 different occasions, I met, one was a guy who had a small company with commercial painters. They had, I don't know, 6 or 8, he'd had it for 20 years, he put all his kids through college. He'd never gone to college, but all 3 of his kids went through college, and he was out of business. And he was sleeping on the couch of one of his kids in her basement of her house because he could not compete. He refused to pay people under the table, and he could not compete. And I had 3 stories like that, 2 commercial sheetrockers, 1 commercial painter. And once you hear that, and these are people that have been in business for decades, that's another side of what the cost is, right? People that work their butt off. When I first came out here, I was a geologist and worked in the oil business, but then the oil business went to hell in a handbasket, and I ended up, I guess I shouldn't say that, the oil business went in the tank, and then I ended up, opening a restaurant, and, we worked 60, 70 hours a week, and I can honestly say, we always paid everyone above the table, everybody paid taxes, I just wouldn't have done it. And yet we would hear of other restaurants that were paying people under the table, especially cooks, dishwashers, sometimes servers, and it does piss you off, right? That they have an unfair advantage. You're trying to do everything right and build I think any good employer tries to build somewhat of a family with their business. When people are getting paid under the table, it's harder to do that. It's impossible to do that, right? Because it's kind of a fly-by-night thing. You're on for this job, you're off for that job. It's all a little bit crooked. So I think the consequence of what you guys are talking about isn't just the people getting injured or isn't just the harm that you guys get in terms of wages or jobs. It undermines the fabric of our economy. I get it. I'm with you. Help us figure this out, whether it's a task force, however, we will take action.
That's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next group, John Hanna, Jennifer Piper, Estebar Ortiz, Patrick Buckley, and Maria Zubel. John
Hanna.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
On behalf of the Carpenters, I want to thank the mayor and the city council for hosting this, and for the governor, for you and your cabinet for facing it. A lot of politicians, a lot of elected officials are unwilling to face the public, and you're doing that, and it's not always the cheers, but commending you for that. I don't want to repeat what was said, but I want to talk about what you said in your leadership. You've been a leader in this country on entrepreneurship and in the state on energy development in a thoughtful way. We need you to do that in the area of workforce training and also dealing with this payroll fraud issue. It's a real issue. And when we've met with your administration, it's just, there's one phrase, one line that seems to be impeding their enforcement. What we need for you to do is to have that same conviction that you're expressing with entrepreneurship and take it to the legislature and make that change. We need you, the task force is a good idea, but honestly, Governor, what we really need is you to use the bully pulpit and to go after that payroll fraud. When you talk to Governor Jerry Brown in California, somebody mentioned it, AB 1701. It makes the general contractor responsible for all those layers of subcontractors you talk about. And that is the law in Nevada, and it's taken care of most of the payroll fraud problem. It's the law in California on public works. You don't have that problem in public works in California. It's in private works. They're changing the law now. Colorado could do it. Workers' compensation. You have a law right now that allows the Attorney General, it's funded through the workers' compensation system. Unfortunately, the Attorney General's not going after it. In California, they have district attorneys going after that. That might be an idea. But the bottom line, as you said, we need to spread out this this work, and you were talking about the transportation funding. What you see before you is a group of people who are pleading with you, spread out the work to our young people who want to get apprenticeship training in this state, but go out and they can't find the work. Or if they're working, the wages are so depressed that it doesn't make it a viable middle-class lifestyle. You talked about fraying the fabric of this state. You're absolutely right, Governor. But this is something that needs to be a priority in your administration. We'd like to see that. Can we get that commitment from you to make it a priority, not just to appoint a task force, but to make it a priority to get to the bottom and try and change this culture which doesn't use state and federal certified apprentice programs, which looks the other way and uses an excuse we can't go after these layers of subcontractors, and actually forcefully goes after them. Can we count on you, on your moral leadership, to go after this problem?
Again, I don't know enough. I mean, you can count on me to go after the issue, right? And if what you're telling me is right, I'm there. I will do it, right?
Can we hold you to that?
I could not be more emphatic that to have large numbers of people getting paid under the table is a menace to the entire society, to the entire economy. So give us a couple months to really dig through and see what the legislation would look like. Again, I can't make laws, right? You're going to have to help with, to get laws done, there's always a level of process and negotiation that goes on. But if those laws are in places like Nevada, Nevada's a pretty purple state. If they can get it through in Nevada, we should be able to get it through here.
Governor, for right now, I agree with you. Could we invite you, would you be willing to come with us and maybe bring Ellen to one of the job sites so you can actually see firsthand how it's going on, right under our very eyes here in this beautiful city of Denver? Are you willing to do that?
Jennifer, I'm also going to ask, please, out of respect to everyone else here, and there's so many people who want to still ask questions tonight, please do try to keep it to a minute. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, Governor Hickenlooper. I'm Jennifer Piper. I work with the American Friends Service Committee. And I'm here not only to speak about Ingrid, but so many other folks who are in her same situation. I wanted to say that I have personally known Ingrid for 2 years now. I know her to be someone who's responsible, who actually did pay everything she was asked to pay as a result of that crime, who did apologize at her sentencing, although the person was not there whose identity was stolen at that time. And to say that I really think pardons are discretionary, that they don't necessarily set a precedent, and that I hope that they remain discretionary. That pardons are something I understand should be used sparingly, but they don't actually set a precedent for other folks. And to say that I don't believe that deportation is an appropriate consequence for working without status in this country. And I don't believe that sending people away who have such long roots here is appropriate, and that the Supreme Court actually named deportation as one of the most extreme consequences people can face. So when faced with that level of injustice, that's why we're here and why we came to you in the first place, to fall on that mercy when justice fails. Thank you.
Estebar?
Good evening, Governor. My name is Esteban. So I'm currently a student at UCD, and a number of my peers are set to graduate this December, but a number of them are DACA students. And so they're concerned, and I'm concerned about their future. They're kind of just stuck. And I want to know at the state level, what are you doing and what can you do to ease their minds and to help them, they're getting their degrees and what's next. So
this is a closely aligned to Ingrid's issue. And again, if anybody thinks that I in any way encourage or support these hostile responses that are coming out of Washington now in terms of deporting people and breaking apart families, that is the worst penalty, and it doesn't make any sense. It's even more egregious when you're talking about DACA kids who came here when they were 1 or 2 or 3. Most of them came when they were under 5 years old. They didn't have a choice to come here. This is the only country they've ever known. They don't, whether their families came from South America or Asia, Africa, they don't have any connection to that country, and to put them back as strangers into a strange land seems incomprehensible. So what can we do? Again, these are federal laws, right? And so we go protest in Washington, write letters, we can stamp our feet, but this is a country run by, a federal government that has certain rights, certain responsibilities, certain lines of authority. And states cannot, even though we are autonomous in many ways, there are certain places where we are almost sovereign, if you know what that, we're almost like small independent countries, but immigration is not one of those places. And so where we can, we bend the laws. I think we are aggressive. Certain municipalities, Commerce City, Denver, there are a bunch of, most of the, not all, but many of the municipalities in the Metro Denver area address this. But until we are able to get Congress to, find a legitimate compromise, a solution, we're kind of stymied. And I think, the one thing going in our favor is I think President Trump is sincere that he wants this to be fixed. He set a 6-month timeline to finally get this. All these issues around immigration have been being kicked down. It's a can kicked down the road for. I was talking about when I ran for mayor of Denver in 2003, right? That's almost 15 years, and there's essentially no progress that I can see, none. And I don't know. Now you're just going to get me into a tizzy. It's very, very frustrating. It's one of the most frustrating things I have to deal with on a daily basis because it is both sides, and what happens is no one's willing to make compromises because they get so angry about the status quo and how frustrating it is that they're not willing to figure out some sort of progression, steps that get us to a final solution.
Right. Patrick and then Maria, these are going to have to be our final 2 questions.
Hello, Governor. I'm Patrick Buckley. I saw you about a month ago in the parking lot, and I mentioned Ingrid to you, and you said you would consider her pardon. I know that you did. And I have a couple questions. One is, you mentioned that you met with the victim, the person whose ID was used?
We talked to her. I did not meet with her.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, because the other question is, did you meet with Ingrid?
I talked to Ingrid. I did not meet with her.
Would you be willing to meet with Ingrid?
I don't see how that serves a purpose. We spent a lot of time on this and went through it, and it is, let me just say, it's no fun to go through this kind of situations. And when you make that final decision to draw it out, I'm not sure it's doing her any good, and I know it's hard for everyone on my team.
Okay, as a personal aside, I'm a substitute teacher in Denver Public Schools, and I've had your son in my class. He's delightful. He's a good student. You're doing a good job. Ingrid's oldest son is in a gifted and talented program in Colorado. He has an opportunity to do very well here if he can stay here and have the support of his mother. Could you find a way to support his education?
Again,
by pardoning his mother.
Yeah. His education is, any child who's here, their education is guaranteed. If his mother leaves, that becomes a very difficult decision. Is he going to go back to South America with her, or is he going to stay here and possibly, likely, have a better education? That's a family decision. That's not my decision.
Well, but you could have some impact on it. I'm done?
Yes, thank you so much. Maria?
Thank you.
What can you do out of compassion even though you can't pardon her? So her children are
Hi, I'm Maria Zubia. I actually work for a nonprofit pediatric clinic, and my question has nothing to do with what everybody else is here in the room, but it's a very important question. I want to know what the state of Colorado is going to do as a Plan B if CHP does not get reauthorized and we have 70 to 90,000 kids in the state and pregnant women that will be affected after this year and that money runs out. I really want to know what plan is in place for them, because as a nonprofit clinic, it not just impacts us as an organization, it impacts our children and our schools that we're in. I know I have less than a minute, so my other question, I know I was the last one, but in all fairness, I do have
You get two questions, yes.
I have a youth here who, she's the only youth from our high school who would like to ask a question, and if you don't mind, you could answer me later, and I would prefer that she ask her question. I run 4 youth advisory boards here in this district, and we always empower our youth to speak. So, is that okay?
I'm Hannah Preskin. I'm a senior at Cherry Creek High School. So I'm very passionate about social action and a bunch of stuff like that. I'm very big leader in my Jewish community and all of that. And I've been having a lot of issues dealing with a lot of the things that have been going on recently with equality and all of that, and a lot of the issues you brought up today. And I'm just curious, is for me and a bunch of other youth, especially in Colorado, that we want to become activists and do stuff like this, what ways do you guys, all of you, think that we can become active and especially coming to town hall meetings like this, but what other ways do you think that we can do it?
Okay, so that's a great question. Not that all the questions on under the table or Ingrid are not also good questions. Why don't I turn this over to Sue, the question about health. You want to take that, and maybe Donald Lynn can take that after you talk about it. And then I'll let each person give a short 60-second response to how can we encourage and facilitate kids becoming more active. Is that the question?
Yes.
So real quickly, the question about the Children's Health Plan. The state has actually developed a way that we can start working and notifying families if we have to do mass disenrollment. Of course, we're going to try to exhaust every possibility. I was sought out to discuss some private solutions that we're beginning to look at, but the state has an ability to start working with families and with Connect for Health, the marketplace, to try to get families to use the purchasing of those private insurance products as an alternative, and the families would get subsidies. So we have a few things going on, and my staff member, Mark Williams, back there will be reaching out to you, so you can help join us as we try to work with these 78,000 kids' families.
I would just add that I think it's a conversation we need to have with our elected legislators as well, because even the solutions that we find will probably not take care of 100% of the issue, people having to pay for things that they can't afford. So I do think it's a solution that we have to pursue together in the state as we go into the next legislative session. But we are also having conversations, obviously, with our Washington delegation to impress upon them the fact. And this may be a great place to your question. There's probably nothing more important than health care for young people and for pregnant women, and maybe that's a great place for you to get activated.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you. I'm Bob Randall. I'm the director of the Department of Natural Resources. I will answer your question about sort of fostering good citizenship in general. In my view, I'll do it in less than that. In my view, exposing young people to otherness is one of the best ways to foster empathy and understanding that the world doesn't revolve around us as individuals, that there are lots of different perspectives out there. And so to me, empathy is one of the biggest factors in being successful later in life. So thanks for the question.
Shailen Bat, I would say Department of Transportation, I would say don't stop caring. the fact that you showed up here tonight means that you care and you care passionately, and things will happen as you grow up, and one day you don't want to wake up and realize that you don't care anymore. Don't stop caring, and my email is just shaylin.bat@state.co.us. You can Google it. It's kind of hard to just remember, but shoot me an email, and I'd love to engage with you on that.
It's tactically, so Stephanie Copeland, Economic Development, tactically, unbelievable question. So glad you care. I was not nearly as together as you are as a high school senior. Couple things that I can say very, very tactically. Don't be afraid to reach out and figure out how you can give us advice. So we have a couple programs right now where I'm collecting student advisors because they're the best advisors that we can get. Please take the initiative and say, I'm passionate about this, let me advise you. We take it all the time. So encourage your friends to do that tactically. Stephanie.copeland@state.co.us. Google it, look it up. But it's an unbelievably core important part to have your help. Thank you.
Hi, Mike Hartman. I'm with the Department of Revenue. Easy answer, volunteer for everything you possibly can. In addition to that, I tend to be very much an introvert, and it's difficult for me to interact with people on a direct basis. Take every meeting you can. You have no idea whether the person across the table from you can help you or the 10 people that they know can help you. So those are the two things, volunteer and take every meeting you can.
Herb Halter with Local Affairs. I've had 32 years of service in the Air Force, and I can tell you I'm back in public service now after working in the private sector. Private sector is wonderful, but public service matters. And all the people up here, many of us have had responsibilities in doing great things in the private sector and making money and all that stuff, but we're back here doing this now because, one, we have a great governor, but also because it matters that you do things for people. So go out, learn some skills. Skills matter. Demonstrating and all those things matter too, but learn some skills that you can use to help folks either in the business world or out there. Get out there and do it. I wish I was your age. With my brain and your body, we could rule the world.
Next.
Okay, yeah. Larry Wolk, Department of Public Health and Environment. I'm a pediatrician. We actually have a youth advisory council. You can apply. We pay you $10 an hour, not under the table. We also reimburse you for your transportation. We're full for this year, but you apply and I'll make sure you get a seat.
All right, Larry. Marguerite Salazar, Department of Regulatory Agencies. What I would advise you to do is to look deep inside yourself and try to figure out what your passion is. What is that thing that drives you, that has you excited when you wake up every morning and decide to go out and do what you're going to do. And once you figure that out, try to find a mentor that can be there with you. And again, all of us would be happy to do that for you. I love doing mentorship. It's marguerite.salazar.state.co.us. Feel free. I really believe in mentorship. It's something our governor has really pushed with us, and that would be a good way. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
How'd you pick up all these addresses? That's really impressive. Reggie Bika, Department of Human Services. 3 things. First of all, you're doing it. Speak up. Be a voice. Speak for other people who can't speak for themselves. You're doing it tonight, so congratulations for that. Number 2, turn around and look at all those green shirts. Organize. Get other people to come to the table to talk. See what I mean? And lastly, elections matter. Vote and make certain that other people vote. Because we have choices of electing people like John Hickenlooper, governor of Colorado, or we can elect other people that can get us in a lot of trouble, right? Those 3 things. Thanks for being here.
So I would reiterate everything that my colleagues said, except I'll make it easy for you. If you go to colorado.gov, you can find all of us. So you don't need to memorize any of those addresses. You can just get to us through our agencies. I think the pieces that I would repeat are find something you're passionate about, and then Google organizations that you can work with. And within those organizations, you will find a mentor. The other thing I would say, which I say to all high school kids, which they hate to hear me say, is that start a civics club and learn how your government works and really get people involved in that, because that is really how you can make a difference.
So I'm going to ask you to give your name to Amy Venturi, who's our Deputy Chief of Staff, because we actually hire young people in the governor's office as interns, and we'd love to have you join us. And we have people all over state government who started out as an intern, who learned and who expressed their opinion. The other thing is, if you're not aware, I mean, and you as a senior, but certainly for some of your other friends, there is something called Girls State. And you may not have heard about it, but go Google that. And I've spoken to Girls State, and it literally is hundreds of young women that come together to learn about civic responsibility, engagement, even protest, which are good things. So
Yes.
that's what my advice to you.
All right.
And I'll finish up just, and I can't add anything to all the wisdom you got here, but thank you for having the guts to come out here and state your case. And that's a bunch of good advice. So I want to thank everybody for coming out and spending all your time again. I know you guys are busy. I want to thank Commerce City Council, the mayor, Sean, thank everybody. I want to thank Amy Venturi for being a moderator. Thank you all very much.